Welcome to the Inner Circle podcast, where cinematography and filmmaking fuses with wellness and leadership. I'm Shane Hurlbut. I'm an ASC cinematographer, and
I'm Lydia Hurlbut. And I love this podcast.
So do I. This is always fun. It's been a while since we jumped in the chair.
It has. And today we're doing one of our favorite things, which goes back to the original Inner Circle podcast, which is answering member questions.
Yeah, that was always fun. We would kind of group them into sections, like one would be lighting focus, one would be camera. This one's all over the map, which is really good.
Right in, and the very first question comes from Felipe, and he is asking about our night cinematography masterclass. To create a silver moonlight effect, Shane used light sources at 3600 Kelvin and set the camera to 2900 Kelvin. Do you know if it's possible to achieve the same silver night look, not a bluish one, using a 5600 source Kelvin and setting the camera around 4800 Kelvin? I'll be running some tests, but I wanted to ask in case someone has already tried this. Thanks in advance.
Awesome. This is an awesome question. And the reason I wanted to drill down on this is because we've actually gotten this asked 12 times. So obviously there was something in the way I was teaching it that I wasn't clear. So note to self. Let's kind of dive into that. So the reason that I don't set the lights to 5600 is because when you're doing night cinematography, you're not going to have the total control of all the lights in the background. If you're in an urban environment, you're going to have street lights that could be LED, they could be sodium vapor, they could be mercury vapor. You're going to have porch lights. You're going to have people's practical lights in their homes. You're going to have cool white fluorescence in storefronts. And we've all grown accustomed to those specific colors. So if you go to 5600 and try to dial your moonlight in and set your camera at 48, then all the cool white fluorescents are going to go pea yellow, green. All the tungsten lights that are porch lights are going to go super saturated orange. And then all the other street lights and everything are going to look very weirdly colorful in like the warm scale because you've taken your camera so high up in color temp. Now, could you go to 4000 and dial, add a little that way? Yeah, that's just going to make your practicals and homes a little warmer. It's going to make your cool white fluorescent be just kind of a green tone. It's not going to have that nice kind of coolish green, that cyan color that I love from cool white fluorescence and metal halides. And your sodium vapors are going to go a really bad brown color. So again, you have to think about, it's like, why would you want to do that?
Right.
So this is because sodium vapors are about 2900 Kelvin. So when you're at 2900 Kelvin, you're kind of good. That it reads it as a nice kind of warm fixture, and it has that green in it already because it's not a color balance light. So these are the things that you have to think of. Because if you are in a stage environment where you can control every light that you have, every LED, every bulb in a practical is on a hue bulb, so you can control whatever color you want with that. If you can control everything, then yes, you could do 5600 your lights and 4800 your camera. But Night exteriors are usually outside, and you're going to not have the ability to knock on the guy's door across the street and say, "Hey, by the way, can I switch out a bulb in your house and put these hue bulbs in?" And then so then the minute you knock on the door, now locations has got to come over. You might have to pay the person something. So these are all things that, just for 35 years of experience, I've found that if you can keep it around the realm of reality, what we all know, because reality is not 5,600 at night. Reality at night is 3,200 Kelvin, where you have the warmth of the homes and the practicals and the street lights and the sodium vapors and the metal halides all blending really nicely.
So I think what you're saying, Shane, is this is not really the time to experiment. There's so many factors outside of your control.
Correct.
On the night exteriors that really go with what you know and
Yes.
experiment in another area.
Yeah, because you're not going to be able to go and change out a sodium vapor light, especially, yes, I've done that, but that's a $65 million movie where you have ultimate control. I was on Need for Speed. I literally had a bucket truck go around, and I would say, okay, take out 5 city blocks, just the right side street lamps. Boom. It's immediately contrast, because I was shooting from this side, so I turned all the street lights that were on the camera side and only had the ones backlighting and edge lighting the cars. So they had a nice downside, just like what we're doing here. We have the camera, our wide shot is here, and all the light is from the opposite side of where we are talking. Yeah. So the camera is the opposite side of where the light is. So I do the same with that. But you cannot have this ultimate control unless you're cheating a night exterior on stage.
Got it. Okay, we are moving on to question number 2. This has to do with the same theme. So this is from Bowie, and thanks for asking this, Bowie. Just finished watching the whole thing, so thankful this was made. Well, we're thrilled that you're thankful. 2 questions that I had written down. What are bubbles on the Condor rig?
Okay, this is great. So those we call, when you have a Maxi Brute or a Dino, which has 24 light Dino, a 36 light Dino, a 12 light Maxi Brute, a 9 light Maxi Brute. I call each one of the bulbs a bubble. Okay, turn off one bubble because it kind of looks like a bubble. It's a 1K par light. And you can either get them very narrow, medium, or wide. And that depends on its angle. So a very narrow is going to give you a 10-degree angle. A narrow is going to give you a 20-degree. A medium is going to give you a 60-degree. And a wide is going to give you a 90-degree of light. So these are all the kind of parameters, but they are rounded in the front like, the 1K par globe, so that's why we call them bubbles. So I would say if I had 2 24 light Dinos like I did on Terminator Salvation, or 2 36 light Dinos, that I was using to backlight the whole escape from the mine field, the mine shaft and all that stuff, I would say turn off 6 bubbles. And then somebody would go and you could click them on the light itself, or we had circuited it so we could turn off 1 bank in a light.
Got it.
So 6 bubbles would be 1 bank. So you could literally just on the breaker box, you could just flick 1 bank off, and that would turn off the 6 bubbles. And if you have the ability, if you have 2 12 light maxis in a Condor, you're actually able to put a person in there. And it's rated for the weight and safety and all that stuff. So if I said, hey, turn off 2 bubbles, the guy literally on the back of a 9 light Maxi Brute or a 12 light Maxi Brute are 12 little switches. So you can turn, 4 bubbles off or 2 bubbles off. And then I'd say, oh, yeah, that's great. Or aim the bank just a little bit to the right, because with a maxi, you actually can fan out the banks like this. And so it's not, usually I start them all straight. And then if I want to maybe catch a tree over on the left-hand side, I'll have the lamp operator pan it a little bit, and then that will catch and backlight a tree. So that's what the bubble means.
Got it. And here's a little side question. When you're up there, how long are you there for?
Oh my God. So there's some times when it's pouring rain. When I started out, I had Condor duty a lot. So you want to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it's raining, you have rain gear. If it's very cold, what I do is I wrap the whole basket with sound blankets so I can dampen the wind. And then I kind of camp out there. I'll run a heater. So if you have Condor duty, it was your responsibility. If you got called, I had my own little portable heater. So they ran an extension cord up along with the power to the light. And then that little heater would keep me warm up there. And then you have a little basket. So it'd be like a milk crate that you have a bridled line, and you can lower it all over the side, and they would send you up hot coffee or hot cocoa or food. Sometimes you'd have to stay up there because you get the lights specifically set perfect. And if there was a lot of manipulation, like nets and stuff like back in the day, you never wanted to move that Condor because you would never get it back in the same place. But now we do most of our control from the ground and from dimmer boards. I can change the color temperature, like when I'm doing 2400 Bs, which I did in the night cinematography. I had 4 2400 Bs with 45 degree and 60 degree reflectors. So I'm able to, from the dimmer board, control color temp from 2800 to 6500 Kelvin, and I can make it a green shift if I wanted to. I can control all the levels all remotely, so we don't have to put people in baskets and have that dangerous scenario, especially if the wind starts picking up.
Right.
If there's somebody in the basket, you got to bring them down, and that also causes, delays in production and all that stuff.
Got it. Being a Condor camper, you got to really set yourself up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That whole sound blanket thing and your little mini heater and making sure you have, a thermos so you can have that and a big chug of water and everything to just, last out the night. And then if the rain starts coming, it is miserable. So then with that, you bring tarps.
Okay.
So you have tarps that you're able to, put into the scenario where you can cover up the top of the canopy.
Yep.
And then with that, you can have a nice, you can have the rain not fall on you all night.
Got it.
Yeah. So you create like a little tent up there.
Yes. Woo, I'm scared of heights, so I would not be good in that at all. Okay, moving on to the next.
Well, I think there was a question there about the candlestick.
Oh my gosh, I forgot one. Thank you so much, Shane.
Boy, it's a good thing I did my prep.
Whew. Can you elaborate on candlesticks on a Condor rig? And thank you for the great educational material.
Oh, well, thank you, Bowie. So the candlestick is a piece of a steel pipe usually, so it has a very sturdy girth. And then what they put on that is a candlestick maker. You can buy this from modern studio equipment. And it slides onto the 1.25" steel pipe, and then it has a couple Allen screws to hold it in there. Then that receives the junior pin that most lights have that are put in Condors. I mean, sometimes you have baby pins, but they're not as strong as a nice junior pin. So, but that candlestick can kick all around in there, even though it's rigged to cheese burrows and stuff. So you always want to put a cup block. And the cup block is what that candlestick sticks into. Now, a cup block is a piece of 2x4 that is, or probably it's a 2x6, I guess, and it's been knurled out in the center to have about this far down. And what we use that for is if, say, we have somebody that's got a rolling chair and you don't want them to roll around and there's like a really could create a sound problem, you just put the cup blocks on there and he can't roll around. With this, you're doing the same thing. You don't want that candlestick to kick out on the bottom and then the whole light goes sideways. So that kind of anchors it to the base of the basket, and then you're able to affix your cheese burrows in a couple places, and that really anchors the light safely.
That makes a lot of sense. And I have to comment that I love the ingenuity of filmmakers. I think that filmmaking is one of the most ingenious professions. You're constantly having to come up with ideas and rigs and
Oh yeah, I one of my favorite things I ever did in my career was key gripping. Because I came from a farm, so I had that kind of common sense, try to make it work, come up with unique rigs, always find some kind of a solution.
Yep.
And Brendan, who did the whole night cinematography rigging for us, what I love is this new generation of grips, because they've created a whole new world of slang. We would call them speed rail starters. They call them grenades. I love it because it does look like a grenade.
yeah.
We called them cheese burrows. We didn't have it. They call them burgers. And then the little cut piece of aluminum speed rail, like it's a quarter round of 1 1/4 inch speed rail, they call that chips. And what that does is it makes the cheese burrow affixed to a square pipe. So if you just clamped onto a square pipe, it would kind of crimp and damage the basket. By putting a chip in there, you're able to make it so you can really cinch it down and it doesn't damage the basket. So it's like, give me 4 grenades, 6 burgers, and 5 chips. I'm like, what? When he started saying this stuff, I was like, what are you talking about? But I love this new slang, and I love how they they move so quick,
Yeah.
and they all understand the language, so you don't have to say cheeseburger, cheese burrow,
Right.
burger, chips. It's a little faster.
I love that. And I think it's all about having fun and that ingenuity with your team from the leadership perspective. So creating a shared language and just being as efficient as possible is what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, on to the next question. Let's switch gears a little bit and go into lenses. Let's talk
Okay.
lenses. So Steve Sepulveda has a great question about, Shane, you mentioned digital diffusion for IRIX lenses and ones that you wouldn't use because they would be too heavy-handed on the image. Which ones would you recommend? By the way, this course and all this education is by far the best anywhere. So thankful for you and the entire FA team. And Steve, we just want to thank you. We love doing this. And so it's our members that really push us into new realms and areas. And
Absolutely. This was a heavy lift. I remember when Lydia's like, what's going to, really be an amazing masterclass? And I said, well, night cinematography. And she goes, is that going to be expensive? And I go, yeah.
I had no idea.
We're
That
lighting.
thing almost killed us.
We're lighting the night. Yeah. So, okay. So with a lot of the lenses, and we're actually shooting with this right now. So we're shooting with converted still glass. It's the G series Sony glass, and it looks a little video-esque because it's so sharp. And that's what I found with the IRIX lenses. They were a little sharp and a little, I don't know, they had they needed some softening to it. So what I use when I need to just take the edge off of a lens, specifically still glass, because it also has embedded contrast. So stills, you have so much range in the raw file. And when we're clamping the LUT down and all that stuff with these cameras, maybe you start to lose a little detail. With cheaper lenses that are like, say, $3,500 and under, you're going to have a heightened contrast because that's how they get their sharpness. They might not necessarily be sharper, they're just contrastier. So a Cook lens is sharper than a Zeiss lens, but a Zeiss lens looks sharper. The reason being is because it's got more added contrast in it, and it's a little cooler. So anything that's cooler looks a little more clinical, looks a little more sharper. So what I tend to do is use a digital diffusion that is called digital diffusion. I think it's DFX diffusion. And that is a specific diffusion that does not show that you're diffusing the lens. So if you go with a Pro Mist or a Black Pro Mist or a Black Soft Effects or a Black Magic or a Black Satin or a Pearlescent, if you are shooting like one of these bulbs right here in the background, that is going to actually bloom. So there's going to be a kind of a halo around the bulb.
Hold on, question. So you're noticing that you're diffusing it?
Yes, you've noticed it. So you've kind of showed your card hand, right? Now, sometimes for like flashbacks and dream sequences, or you just want to have that kind of period vibe, I've used Pro Mists, I've used Black Satins, Black Magic, Hollywood Black Magic. I've used these Glimmer Glass, Black Glimmer Glass. I've used those to create a flashback or a dream sequence or something that you want to give it that kind of feel.
Got it.
But if you're using a lens and you're not doing those things, then those are things that you would want to not show your hand with. So I use digital diffusion because it is kind of invisible. So what it does is it specifically seeks out the skin tone and it softens the skin. And that's what we're using right now. We have 105 millimeter on both of our close-ups here. So I've gone to a 2. So it's a 2 is the grade, and then we have a 35 millimeter wide shot out there, and that is on a 4. Okay. If I went to a 21 or an 18, I'd probably go to a 5. And if I went to a 14 or a 12, I'd go to a 6. And if I went to an 8 or a 10, I'd go to a 7. So the wider the lens, the thicker diffusion. The tighter the lens, the lower number. Because with a tighter lens, you're shooting through a much more specific area of the glass, so you need it to not be as thick. So because it's more millimeters, so you're compressing and you're shooting in a smaller area. So with digital diffusion, by using that style of like 100 mil, I always go to a 2. If I'm going to a 150, I'm going to a 1. And it all depends on the glass. Some glass is sharper than others. We're going right now with like the G series, so it's a little crisper and sharper. So I go one level heavier than I would on a Leica lens or a anamorphic Caldwell Chameleon or an Arri Signature Prime. Those I'd go one level lighter. But what this does, it's invisible. So it semi-blurs the skin, okay? So you don't see all the finite details and pores. And then it also helps any highlights. So if highlights are in the background, it just subtly blooms them, but you don't see the halo. It just defocuses them. So it's almost like if you were in DaVinci Resolve and you saw a highlight in the background and it was kind of clipping, you would then go in, put a window around it, and then use a little diffusing in there to defocus the highlight so the clip doesn't look so electronic. Well, digital diffusion is doing the same exact thing, and it doesn't show your hand. And this is, I think, what takes still glass and lenses cheaper than $3,500 and below, and turns them into more of a cinematic look.
And I know for cinematographers, everybody's getting into a lot of old glass as well, and to put on the digital cameras. So, if you don't have a choice, it's one thing. But if you do have a choice, how do you decide what type of old glass?
Oh my
Or
God,
there's
there
so
never
much.
used to be so many glass selections, and that's what I thought the DSLR revolution really started, because we were taking Canon 5Ds that had a whole range of still glass that was from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and now we're taking all that and rehousing it in a cinema wrapper, as I call it, that has all the nice gears and everything. Same millimeter out front, 95 or 104 or 110 millimeters. So your matte box clamps onto it really nicely. You don't have to screw around with different rings and all that stuff. And this is what really ignited the vintage lens kind of assault, because I'd never seen so much vintage glass in my life. Kawas came out of Japan, and I shot so many commercials with Kawa glass. It was from the 60s, looked so good, had a lower contrast point, flared beautifully. It would give you what I call the sunny side up egg flare.
Okay.
So you'd have the golden center and then a halo that was whitish yellow. It was like, to me, Kawas are one of the most beautiful flaring lenses on the planet. And then you have Cooks that do this weird rainbow halation that comes from the side that has all the colors of a rainbow, and it kind of striates. Panavision lenses also do that when they flare from the side and above. So, the vintage glass revolution has really taken hold, and Old Fast Glass is one of the leaders in this whole vintage lens assault on the industry. It's given us so much more creative options to really play with, and like another one is the K55s. K35s. Sorry, the K35s. The Canon glass that was from the 50s and 60s. It has very much kind of the look of the Kawas, but not as cool a flare. Okay. So but it's the kind of thing where you just want to test all these things and see what's right for your project.
Yeah, love that. I'm always fascinated by what's hip and trending for cinematographers. So. Okay, next question. Let's go into a directorial question. And this one is...
Well, hold on. Before we do that, should we
Yes.
do is there any other lighting ones? Because then we can make this more lighting centric, and then
Okay.
we could then do that on the second podcast.
Let me look for lighting. Engaging, not really on lighting. There's a camera one. And
Because that one is a whole other world.
okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Sorry, there is one. Can you explain in more detail the difference between ambient and fill light? And this comes from Zachary Gross, especially in a closed studio environment. If it's created artificially, is ambient light usually or only coming from above the set and the ceiling? And if so, is the ambient light the light that should be lifting your general exposure levels into a proper range, and then key and fill doing the shaping of your subject?
Okay, so fill and ambient light are kind of the same thing. The big thing is in like a studio environment, say you're lighting a bedroom, let's say, and you have a day interior. Okay, so what is out those windows? Well, if you look out a window like what we're looking out right now, okay, I'm seeing blue sky, I'm seeing green trees, I'm seeing gray to brown bark, I'm seeing gray sidewalk. Okay. So that is ambient light. So if I didn't have this 1.2 ND on these windows now, a lot of that light would be coming in the windows and affecting the light on our faces. That is ambient light. And what a lot of people have done, and I have done it most of my career till I really went down the rabbit hole of light quality. And light quality is very unique because what I just described, blue, green, brown, and gray, and sometimes white, if you have a white building in the background, I've made bounces that have checkerboards in them. And the checkerboards have a blue, a gray, a brown, and a white, right? So, and they're checkerboarded throughout the whole bounce. And then I take lighting units and I bounce into that so that feels like the light that would be outside of a window and seeing the blue sky. So that's my cyan checkerboard squares, the brown trees or a brown building. That's the brown. The gray is the sidewalk and the white is white buildings.
Yeah.
And this bounce has changed the way I light. And it's really, that's the ambient light that would be coming into a room. And then what you would want to do is take that ambient and wrap it with fill. So if the light is coming from this direction and you're shooting over here, you'd want to fill from just over camera. Now, fill is not to balance your exposure, it's to open up the shadows, to kind of lighten the contrast. So we have a key that's on your face right now, and the fill is a little bit what's in front of right over me. And usually I never do something coming from the other side of the camera, but that is just directly over our wide camera, so it fills in the shadows on this side. But most of the time I'm doing 180 degree of light. I'm doing a backlight or a 3/4 backlight that then becomes a side light that then wraps around to the fill in the front. So you're using fill to kind of lighten the contrast and see into the shadows more so it's not so stark. If you're doing a horror film, you're going to be using less fill. If you're doing a rom-com, you're going to be using more fill. And that's what I kind of went into the night cinematography. I did a ratio, because this is what a lot of people coming up in the digital age, they've been working off monitors. Well, when I was shooting film, there were no monitors. There was like this really shitty CCE video tap, which was black and white, and you couldn't tell what any levels were. So you needed a light meter. With a light meter, you understand ratios, your key to fill to backlight ratio.
Now, I'm going to stop you there because there is a artistic disagreement on using all of these different ratio levels, right? Or do you do it by eye? Because certain cinematographers just like to do it by eye.
I do it by eye.
But
you can't do it by eye on film.
Correct. And
Correct.
That's the point that
that's what I'm going into.
Okay.
Because with video and digital, what you see is what you get. If you have a really nice LUT that's balanced and is been designed by a colorist, so there's not any weird swings within the lookup table, then you are what you see is what you get. With film, you're not seeing anything. It has to be processed. It has to be developed.
Right.
And so this is why your lighting ratios are so important, and your light meter and spot meter are very important when using film. And this is something that I know that we're going to dive into in my next masterclass, is really teaching the art of exposing film and all kind of the in-camera effects that you can do with it.
Because films had a major resurgence.
Absolutely.
This year, which is very exciting.
Oh, I mean, you think
the
about
art
it.
form.
There's 10 of the Oscars that are for Best Picture, and 6 of them were shot on film, and 4 digital. That's a big swing.
Yeah.
That's completely different than last year and the year before. So this resurgence of film, Kodak had to, fire up another building and retool and start more production and everything. And that's a great thing because we don't want to lose that art form
I
because
agree.
film has such a organic feel, and it's taken digital from when we started shooting digital. I can't even really think of a Sony F900 or 950 really digital. It was bad. But I would say the first gen of the Arri cameras and the Reds and some of the Sonys, when the sensors started to get kind of okay, 10, 12 stops of latitude, 11 stops of latitude, when they were starting to get into that play, they still did not have the look of film. And we were always saying, why don't the highlights blow out?
Yeah.
Why aren't they more organic when they bloom? Now, the film, because it only has about 13 and a half stops of latitude, and now we have cameras like the Burano that has 16, 15 and a half, 16 stops of latitude. These are cameras that have that bloom now and give you not that clippy video vibe. And it's looking much more filmic because of technology, and the advancements in sensor technology have given us the ability to make it look just as good as film, I think, now. But there are a lot of things that you can't do with digital that you can do with film. And there's a lot of unique effects that you cannot do with digital. One of them is change the shutter. Once you hit that record button, you cannot do anything to that camera. You cannot change the color temp. You cannot change the shutter. You can't change the frame rate. You can't change anything. So with film, I can control all of those.
Yeah.
So that opens your creative space to a lot more options. And that's what I really love.
I love that. Well, Shane, I'm going to end on one wellness note for this podcast because we have not done anything for wellness. So I'm just going to sneak it in.
Sneak that in because we said it was a fusion, and I have bogarted the whole podcast.
So I am drinking matcha green tea here. And
what's the power of matcha?
It's amazing. It has so many great benefits for the body. Anti-inflammatory. It's great for the brain. It has a lot of caffeine. There's so many wonderful things. But the secret with matcha is it has to be hot. So just remember when you're doing green tea and you're doing matcha that you heat it, because that's how you get all of the benefits best absorbed into the body. And
so let me go with this. I go to your favorite coffee place that's all like booted out, called Longevity, and they do a cold matcha.
I think what they do is they heat the matcha and then they ice it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it has to be brewed hot.
Okay.
Okay? So you brew it hot. You just can't do matcha cold.
Gotcha.
At least that's what I've read according to the research.
What other wellness tip do you have?
I think the biggest wellness tip that I have to end on is to trust yourself. I've been really looking at the concept of trust and how that impacts our brain. And it keeps us out of fight or flight when we're in trust mode. And what's so interesting is that you get in a situation with shooting where you feel uncomfortable, you don't maybe know quite what you're doing, or you've never been in this situation before. And what's really important is to take a big deep breath and just mentally talk yourself into that you've got it and you're going to find a solution. And I think anything that stays out of this fight or flight going into, stress is so important for our bodies. And that really starts with trust. Trusting ourselves, pushing down imposter syndrome. Even if we don't know or haven't done it, we're going to give it our best. And that's all we can do.
And I love that you always push me to try new things, right? It's like I'm always like your guinea pig. And I love that. Some things work. Most of them work. Some of them have been detrimental to my health. Thanks a lot.
No. Detrimental. You just didn't like them. Detrimental.
But one of the newest things that you've done is this shaker box. So every morning, Lydia and I get up and we immediately get on the shaker. And tell everyone what the shaker box is all about.
So it's the new hot trend, and I got this for Shane for his birthday in health and wellness. But what it does, it promotes lymphatic drainage essentially in the body. It is for toning and tightening, and it's a gentle shaking motion where you stand on this platform.
I've been doing this thing 3 days, and I've already got a 1 1/4 pack.
It's amazing. What I notice the most about it is that I feel like I start my day de-stressed, and I actually look forward to doing it. And you can do all sorts of things. You can do arms with it. You can do
kettlebells, push-ups.
Kettlebells. It's really good for balance, which is so important as you age. And so I think whatever way that you are incorporating exercise is the bottom line at the beginning of your day into your routine sets your brain up and body for a wonderful day. And I think that's really what we're talking about.
I noticed my balance had changed huge.
Mm-hmm.
The first couple times I got on it, I almost fell off.
Right.
I was like catching myself. But now I'm up on my toes
Yep.
and down and flexing and one toe and balancing. And this is something that it does.
It
correct?
does. It's really, really good for balance. And I think for filmmakers especially, we've seen the injuries. We've seen, how many times on set you're racing, you lose your balance, or, you hurt yourself in some way with a twisty move with the camera. And so it's really paying attention to your body and setting it up in as many ways as we possibly can for health, because you are an extraordinary athlete as a filmmaker. And I think that we forget about that. So you need to perform like an athlete. So anyway, that is Wellness Tip of the Day that we're sticking on the end of the podcast of Cinematography. And thank you all so much for joining this episode. Thank you, Shane, for wonderful answers as always. And thank you, members. Please keep sending your questions. We love them. We want to answer them. Don't forget to ask your wellness ones too, or leadership. And that is it for this episode of the Inner Circle podcast.
And I also want to thank all of our sponsors of this podcast, Nanlux, that every single light that you're seeing being illuminated here is by Nanlux, and B&H for supplying all these amazing mics so we sound really good. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.